The sinister secrets of my most terrifying neurology case still haunted by the unexplained truth. Dr. Emily Carter's heart raced as she pulled into her driveway, enveloped by the insidious darkness of Cherrywood Glen. Every shadow seemed to pulse with unease, and the rustling leaves felt like whispers of the sinister secrets lurking behind every door. It was another late shift at the underfunded hospital, another battle against invisible enemies that crept inside the heads of her patients. But as she stepped out of her car, that familiar sense of dread slithered through her veins. Home, sweet home. The flimsy structure that gave her comfort now felt like a brittle shell, ready to splinter at the first sign of trouble. A tired smile greeted her at the door. David, her partner, a middle school teacher already worn thin by the challenges of his own career. Their young son, Ben, was blissfully unaware, sleeping peacefully in the next room. But as Emily turned to look out the window, her heart sank. The bright blue and red lights slicing through the night painted the neighborhood in jarring hues of chaos. Mark Reynolds, the town's beloved volunteer firefighter, was being wheeled away on a stretcher, his eyes wild and desperate. Panic rose in her throat as the unmistakable chill of dread crawled up her spine. The urgency of the scene gripped her tightly, an icy fist of fear squeezing the air from her lungs. Mark thrashed against the restraints, and in that moment, she could see it something darker than just a medical emergency flickering in his wide, terror-stricken eyes. Whispers filled her ears like a haunting melody as she held her breath, suspended in disbelief. What happened? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, something far worse than anyone dared to acknowledge. Over the next few days, the food in her stomach began to rot, replaced by unease. Insinuations turned into murmurs among neighbors. Strange events spiraled into thoughts too dark to voice. Children were waking from nightmares. Parents exchanged worried glances, words dying on their lips as Emily approached. Then she stumbled upon the legend of the Dark Weaver. A malevolent spirit, feeding off the fears and strife of the residents, was said to ensnare the minds of those who dared to look too closely. She dug deeper into the tale, feeling a dreadful exhilaration mixed with horror. Hidden traumas began to surface, and Emily felt the walls closing in as she navigated a web of suffering that seemed to ensnare the entire community. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As tension gripped Cherrywood Glen tighter than ever, anonymous threats lurked behind her every move, taunting her with uncertainty. Isolation became her only companion, and the neighborhood she thought she knew felt like a drifting ghost town. Trust frayed, laughter turned hollow, and Emily found herself haunted by paranoia, especially after seeing Mark's wild, trembling figure on her doorstep. With darkness pooling in his eyes, he whispered, "You should be afraid of what hides in plain sight." Shivers rippled down her spine, trapping her in the suffocating silence of uncertainty, as dread settled within her home, a nightmare she couldn't yet escape from. Emily lay awake that night, the weight of shadows pressing down on her chest. Each creak of the house felt amplified, the walls breathing in sync with her anxiety. She couldn't shake the image of Mark's haunted gaze, nor the words he had uttered. Was he a victim of the peculiar happenings that plagued the town, or was he something else entirely? The morning arrived with an unsettling calm. Outside, the sunlight spilled weakly, attempting to push through the clouds that hung like ominous sentinels over Cherrywood Glen. She donned her scrubs, a familiar armor against the chaos she faced in the hospital, and tried to focus on her day ahead. But her mind remained ensnared in the mysteries unspooling around her home. Throughout her shifts, patients came and went, all presenting with inexplicable symptoms. Hallucinations and sudden outbreaks of paranoia spiked among the town's inhabitants. Each case was tagged with vague explanations from the doctors on call, but Emily felt a prescient link between them, a thread woven by the Dark Weaver that whispered of impending doom. She jotted down notes, feverishly searching for a connection, a clue that could help her break the cycle of madness. When her lunch break finally arrived, she couldn't bring herself to eat. Instead, she scoured local archives, digging into anything that could explain the surge of cases. Horrifying articles chronicled mysterious events in Cherrywood Glen's past: disappearances, tragic accidents, lives shattered and interwoven like threads in a macabre tapestry. The townsfolk had buried their dark history, yet it echoed back at her from the pages. Fear rippled through her as she stumbled upon an old photographic gathering from years ago in the very center of town, an unsanctioned ceremony surrounding what appeared to be a dark, twisted monument. Emily stared at the faces in the picture, searching for signs of something ominous. Then she saw it: Mark Reynolds, younger then, standing in the back, a smiling face among the crowd. But beneath it, a shadow lingered, half hidden in the darkness that blurred the edges of the photo. Struck by sudden terror, she felt the chill of eyes upon her. She turned quickly, realizing she was alone in the cafeteria. The quiet hum of fluorescent lights hung heavily in the air. It felt wrong, too still. Her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, pulling her from the foreboding atmosphere. The message on the screen felt like an omen. "Emily, it's David. We need to talk. Things are worse than you think." Heart racing, she burst from the cafeteria and rushed to her car, dread pooling in her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was running headlong into something sinister. What had happened since she left for work? As she drove through Cherrywood Glen, the town's familiar facade morphed into a labyrinth of darkness. Each street seemed different, foreign, as if the roads were twisting beneath her car. Her heart thudded against her ribs, a drumbeat of anxiety that matched the rhythm of her thoughts. What if the dark weaver had awakened, hungry and waiting? When she arrived home, the door stood ajar. An icy breeze swept past her as dread coiled in her gut. "David? Ben?" she called, her voice trembling as it echoed against the walls. Silence greeted her, stretching longer than it should. She stepped inside, feeling the oppressive air wrap around her like a cloak. Fear flooded her veins. What had her husband meant? Were they still safe here? Then she heard the faint sound of crying echoing from the basement. It was Ben's voice, laced with something that made her blood run cold. "Mom," came the muffled whimper, layered with undeniable distress. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She rushed toward the basement door, the darkness seeping through the crack as she hesitated, wrenching her mind between the urge to flee and the instinct to protect. If the dark weaver was real, she needed to confront it head-on. Taking a deep breath, she stepped down the stairs, and as she reached the last step, the light flickered and went out. Darkness engulfed her completely. What awaited her in that impenetrable void? She swallowed hard, heart hammering, and called out again. "Ben!" The only answer was silence, and it terrified her more than anything else. As she edged deeper into the shadows, she wondered what lurked in that darkness, waiting to claim them all. Emily's heart pounded as she took another tentative step into the gloom. The air was thick, suffocating, and smelled of damp earth and something rancid, as if the darkness was alive, smothering her senses. Breathing was hard, like the invisible weight of that chilling silence was pressing down on her chest. "Ben!" she called out, voice wavering, swallowed by the oppressive quiet. The only response was a low, eerie sound that skated along her spine, an echo of a child's sob mingled with something far more terrifying. It twisted in her gut, gnawing at her courage. The faint sliver of light above her flickered like a sputtering candle, and she raised her hand instinctively, shielding her eyes. If it went out completely, she had to find Ben. Her footfalls seemed thunderous as she navigated the steps closer to the source of the crying. With each sound, a veil of unease draped heavier over her, reminding her of the stories she'd researched. The darkness felt tangibly sinister, like it was waiting to tell her the secrets that weren't meant to be uncovered. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she strained to see amid the inky blackness. She groped along the wall, fingers skimming over the cool, rough surface until she felt the wooden door frame of what was once the cellar and entrance to who knows what. "Ben!" she shouted again, feeling desperation creep into her voice. There had to be a light switch somewhere. Surely he had a flashlight or something. A loud crash suddenly reverberated from within the room, making her jump. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to escape this oppressive darkness, but the cries of her son pushed her forward, driving her to discover the truth hidden inside. "Mom!" Ben's voice was clearer now, a sharp spike of clarity in the overwhelm of shadows. It hung in the air, torn between terror and the safety of a familiar call. She gritted her teeth, pushed past the fear, and reached for the door handle. Soon as the door creaked open, a musty, rancid wind billowed out, brushing against her skin like a cold hand. With shaking hands, she stepped inside. It was dim, the only light coming from a leaking bulb that sputtered in the far corner. There, Ben was crouched against the far wall. His face was streaked with tears and dirt, eyes wide and darting around the room. Relief coursed through her, but it was short-lived. "Mom, there's something," he started, but the words were lost as a terrible growl echoed from the darkness beyond him, low and rumbling, vibrating through the very floor beneath her feet. "Get back, Ben!" she ordered, fear igniting her every instinct as she pushed toward him. Yet a horrifying shadow, predatory and lightless, surged forward from the corner. It rushed at them, and in its wake, Emily felt a sudden, suffocating dread wrap around her like a noose. She grabbed Ben's hand, pulling him upward, and turned to run back toward the door. The growl rose into a furious snarl, and just like that, the light flickered once more, starkly illuminating the room and then, in a heartbeat, extinguishing everything. They were plunged into darkness again, the world around her shifting, shuddering. Emily stumbled back, clutching Ben tighter. Where had the door gone? Where was their escape? "Turn the light back on!" Ben screamed, panic spilling from his voice. A high-pitched cry erupted from the far side of the room, far too close, sending chills darting down her spine. She fought not to scream, not to let fear overwhelm her, as she pressed against something wet and sticky beneath her feet. Darkness danced in every corner, encircling them, pulling them into its grasp. Then she glimpsed it, just ahead, a glimmer of shadow that moved with a purpose, a malicious intelligence carving its path toward them. As the thing lunged forward, Emily felt a primal urge to flee, but her body refused to obey. All she could do was stare as it took form, a monstrous shape swirling from the void, borders blurring as it lunged into the light. "Mom! Please!" Ben cried, his tiny hands shaking as they gripped her. "Run!" she shrieked, finally finding her voice as terror enveloped her, shoving her into action. They bolted, racing toward the last known source of truth, the basement stairs, heart pounding, breath hitching with every desperate step. But the shadows shifted, clawing at her as they ran, and not far behind, a sinister whisper slithered through the air, barely audible. "Where do you think you're going?" What had been awakened beneath their home? As they fled into the darkness, Emily had to know how far would the Dark Weaver go to entrap them. And could they outrun the horrors that lingered in the corners of their twisted fate? The darkness clawed at their heels as Emily and Ben raced up the dilapidated stairs. Each step felt like an eternity, the shadows whispering threats that made her flesh crawl. Breathless, she glanced back, heart thundering in her chest. The growling had morphed into a haunting cacophony, the sound of laughter twisted and cruel, echoing around them like a cruel joke. "Mom, it's getting closer!" Ben gasped, eyes wide with fear, pulling at her hand. She could feel his small body trembling, and her heart broke at his terror. "Just a bit further, sweetheart. We can't stop," she shouted, pushing them to move faster. She could barely see the top of the stairs through the penetrating dark. It loomed like a promised salvation just out of reach. The air felt heavier. With each step, a wave of dread crashed over her, threatening to drag her back down into the abyss. The malice coming from below was palpable. It hung like a fog, enwrapping them in a chill that sank deep into her bones. Then, suddenly, she heard it, a loud, echoing thud behind them. The creature was breaking through the shadows, relentless and roaring. "Mom! Hurry!" Ben screamed, pulling harder. Just before they reached the top, the light flickered back on, illuminating the entry into the cellar with a sickly yellow glow. To her horror, She saw what had chased them, a face, mottled and grotesque, grinning with twisted delight. The creature's eyes glinted like shards of glass, hungry and cold, its mouth stretching far too wide, revealing teeth that looked far too large for its emaciated frame. It surged forward, dragging itself closer to them, the shadows coalescing around its form. "Go! Go!" Emily urged, feeling the fear swelling inside her, almost swallowing her whole. She leaped toward the top, yanking Ben through the door just as that terrifying apparition lunged. The threshold slammed shut, but not before she saw those glittering eyes dim against the light. She barely registered the thud of its massive form crashing against the door as she stumbled forward, dragging her son with her into the hallway. Panting, Emily leaned against the wall, trying to gather her fragmented thoughts. The house around them was still, but she could sense a pulse, a low, throbbing energy that seemed to respond to their terror. "What was that, Mom?" Ben asked, trembling. "I don't know," Emily admitted, heart racing. "But we have to keep moving." They hurried down the narrow hallway, which felt like it was closing in on them with each step, as though the house itself were alive, shifting and tightening its grip. Emily's mind raced with thoughts of escape, but the house was an intricate maze she barely understood. Each turn was familiar yet foreign, leading them deeper into the bowels of their own fears. Then, as they pushed through another door, an unearthly sound filled the room, an unnerving combination of laughter and sorrow. Emily's heart sank. The walls were adorned with photographs. Ben's face stared out at her from swathes of shadow and light, but the expressions were wrong, twisted in fear and agony. It was as if they were watching, judging. "What is this place?" she questioned, her voice a mere whisper. "Mom, it's too quiet." Ben's grip slackened, and Emily felt the air turn cold around them. She couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched, and worse, that they weren't alone. Then came the whispers, threading through the air like a dark fog. "Help us!" She let us down. "Help us find her!" Emily's stomach turned. Who were these voices? Were they trapped here too, like her and Ben? "We have to go," she insisted, moving toward the other side of the room. But as they moved, the floor beneath them trembled. "Mom! Behind you!" Ben shouted, pointing in terror. Emily spun around, eyes wide as she saw the shadows congealing from every corner of the room, twisting together with a life of their own, creeping toward them with deadly intent. Time seemed to freeze as she realized the terrifying truth. They were not just hiding from the creature, they were at the mercy of something much darker, something that wanted them trapped in its web forever. "Run, Ben! Run!" she screamed, the dark laughter growing louder, enveloping them. With no clear direction, she charged forward, feeling the weight of despair clutch at her heart. The shadows surged, reaching for them, clawing at their sanity. And as they barreled through the doorway, a chilling question lurked in the back of her mind: what had they woken? What darkness lurked beyond where they dared not look? But more than that, who were those trapped voices begging for help? They burst into a narrow corridor, shadows swirling at their heels like a hungry tide. The air was thick with a miasma of despair, the whispers intensifying until they blurred together in a haunting symphony. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps, and she glanced down at Ben, whose eyes shone with unshed tears. "Keep moving," she urged, pressing forward. But each step felt heavier than the last, like the weight of the darkness threatened to drag them back. As they hurried along the crumbling passage, a flickering bulb cast erratic shadows that danced provocatively on the walls. She spotted doors, each one adorned with peeling paint and rusted locks, but dread twisted her stomach. What lay behind them? "Mom!" Ben's voice quivered, and she felt a chill run down her spine. "Shh!" she interrupted, listening acutely. The laughter from before had shifted into a low growl, a sound not of amusement, but of hunger. "We have to be quiet." They crept toward a heavy wooden door at the end of the hall, its surface marred with deep cuts, each one possibly a mark left by those who had tried to escape this nightmare. Emily paused, her heart pounding fiercely. She pushed her ear against the door, hearing nothing but the thrumming of her own pulse. "Should we go in?" Ben whispered, his eyes darting around. "We don't have much choice," Emily replied, turning the handle slowly, half expecting it to burst open. But it opened with an ominous creak, revealing a dimly lit room filled with dust and forgotten relics of storage space, or perhaps a former haven that had long succumbed to neglect. The room was lined with shelves stacked high with old, rotting boxes, their contents hidden under layers of age. In the center, an antique mirror stood, its glass fogged and cracked. Something pulled at Emily, an instinct that made her want to look closer. "Mom, wait!" Ben's voice broke through her reverie, but she could hardly concentrate. In the mirror, she saw their reflections, or did she? The figures within the glass shifted unnaturally. She stepped back, her heart racing. They didn't look right. The reflections seemed to distort, contorting into faces twisted in agony. "Mom!" Ben cried out, eyes wide with terror. The mirror cracked, a spider web of darkness erupted across the surface. Emily's breath hitched as an unmistakable howl echoed around them, vibrating through the very walls. She yanked Ben back, urgency igniting her movements. "Run!" she shouted, pulling him through the doorway. But now, a barrage of laughter mingled with screams radiated from all directions. They stumbled back into the corridor, but the space felt transformed. The walls had closed in, constraining their escape. "Where do we go?" Ben whimpered, panic taking hold. "No choice. We go back," Emily insisted, her grip tightening on Ben's hand as they dashed toward the cellar door they had just escaped. But as they approached, an unnatural force slammed the door shut, throwing them backward onto the floor. "Help us find her," the voices whispered and wailed from everywhere, clawing at their minds like icy fingers. "Who?" Emily shouted into the darkness, desperation lacing her voice. "Who needs help? What if it's a trap?" Ben whimpered, squeezing his eyes shut. "I don't know," she cried, feeling the shadows swirl dangerously close, ready to swallow them whole. Suddenly, all fell quiet. Even the whispers faded. A stillness descended that was more terrifying than any noise. Emily's heart raced, and she sensed something looming in the silence, something waiting. We need to find a way out," she mumbled, trying to mask her own rising fear. "We can't stay," a loud crack echoed behind them. Emily turned instinctively, and her blood ran cold. The mirror, the one they had fled from, now shimmered violently, rippling like water stirred by an unseen force. But then the reflection changed. The cracked surface smoothed, revealing a figure, her own face, but twisted, eyes wide with dread, mouth opening in a silent scream. Something within that reflection called to her, something buried deep in her mind. As the room began to distort, walls bending and warping, she suddenly understood this was only the beginning of their twisted tale. But what they had truly awakened would soon be revealed. Could she remain strong enough to face it? A sudden pulse of darkness erupted around them. The shadows lunged, shrieking as they raced into the unknown. What awaited them now? The shadows unfurled like fingers grasping for warmth as Emily and Ben stumbled away from the mirror. The hallway shrieked around them, a cacophony of madness that surged through the dark. Emily's heart pounded like a drum, each thump echoing her panic. "Where do we go?" she gasped, desperation lacing her voice. "Mom, I want to go home." Ben's pleas cut through the chaos, sending a wave of ice through her core. She couldn't let him see her fear. She had to be brave. "Just stay close," she screamed, feeling the walls shift ominously. The air grew denser, pressing against her skin like an unfriendly embrace. She could almost hear the heartbeat of the building itself, a slow, sinister rhythm that pulsed with malice. Without thinking, Emily darted down the corridor, her instincts blaring like alarms. Behind her, the walls closed in, hungry for any chance to trap them. "Wait!" Ben cried, struggling to keep pace. The moment felt stretched, time warping under the suffocating weight of dread. Each door they passed loomed like a dark mouth waiting to swallow them whole. She spotted a small staircase spiraling upward, its steps worn down by time. "There!" she pointed, hope igniting within her. "We'll go up." They rushed towards it, hearts racing, yet the shadows clung to them, refusing to let go. As they ascended, the air grew cooler, heavy with contradictions and unnatural chill that made her skin prickle. A flickering bulb overhead cast sickly yellow light, distorting their surroundings. Emily felt eyes watching from the darkness, unseen but undeniably present. "Mom, what if there is something up there?" Ben whispered, his voice trembling as they reached the landing. Just as she was about to answer, an anguished wail echoed from above, a sound that scraped against her nerves and sent shivers racing down her spine. "Ben, stay behind me," she warned, instinctively pushing him closer as they stepped through the threshold into a dimly lit room. Dust motes danced in the air, but it was a painting on the far wall that held her gaze, a scene of a family. They appeared happy, but their eyes, those hollow, soulless eyes, they seemed to follow her. "Is that us?" Ben whispered, pointing as they drew nearer. "No," Emily replied, gripping his hand tightly. "That's not us then." Something shifted. The shadows seemed to throb, shifting around the walls like sentient beings. The laughter resumed, but now it was mocking, taunting, a cruel reminder of their plight. With each passing moment, the paintings changed, twisting and contorting into grotesque depictions of agony, their smiles melting away into anguish. "Mom, it's so creepy," Ben murmured, his small voice breaking the spell. Emily's thoughts raced as she scanned the room for an exit. There has to be a way out, but just then, a rattling sound echoed from the floor above, as if something large had dropped to the ground. A rush of air swept through the room, chilling them to the bone. The door behind them slammed shut with a sudden ferocity, trapping them in the nightmare. "Mom!" Ben shouted, his terror palpable. "Look! The window!" she yelled, pointing to a dirty, barred window. They rushed toward it, but it was locked tight. Gritting her teeth, Emily pounded her fists against the glass, desperation fueling her. "Help us!" she cried, but the room mocked her, the shadows dancing triumphantly. "He is coming for you," a voice rasped from the corner, low and guttural, like nails scraping against wood. Emily turned, heart pounding, her breath hitching in her throat. A silhouette emerged from the gloom, tall and shadowed, its face obscured. It stepped into the flickering light, revealing sparkling eyes that seemed impossibly deep, like black holes pulling in all light. "I've been waiting," the figure hissed, the words slithering through the air. "Who are you?" Emily demanded, anger masking her fear. "I am your reflection," it replied, each word twisted, laced with malevolence. The darkness shifted, coiling tighter around them, and Emily's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. How could she stand against something that knew her so intimately? In that moment, the laughter crescendoed, the walls thinning as the figure leaned closer, breath chilling them both. "There's only one way out," it whispered. "What do you mean?" she asked, fear staining her voice. "That pain you seek to escape, you must embrace it." The shadows recoiled, the lights flickering as cast-off whispers wound around her like a vine. And then, from behind the figure, another set of eyes blinked open. "What do I have to do?" she breathed, realizing the web was tightening, the trap closing in as her and Ben's fate hovered in the balance. The figure smirked, its eyes glinting with sinister glee. "Trust is a powerful weapon, but it will come with a price." The shadows closed in, darkness swallowing the light, as a chilling laugh echoed, drowning out her thoughts. Their journey was far from over. What choice would Emily make now? The air lost its warmth as the echoed laughter dissolved into silence, leaving only the weight of dread hovering over Emily and Ben. She could feel panic crawling through her veins, tightening her grip around Ben's small hand as she held him close. "We need to move," she whispered, not believing her own voice, trembling with each syllable. The figure loomed closer, dark and twisting, as if testing the edges of its own form. Its presence seemed to absorb the light, creating a disorienting void that drew them in but offered no escape. The eyes, those endless, swirling voids fixed upon her, and Emily felt something within her begin to unravel. It was a hunger, an insatiable need that echoed in her own heart, a terrifying mirror of her deepest, unspoken fears. "Come play," the figure lured, its words curling like smoke around them, poisonous and enchanting. "Face the shadows lurking inside you. You need only open the door." Emily shook her head violently, as if refusing to accept what it was saying. "I want to let you in." Ben's wide eyes flickered between her and the figure, confusion etched across his small face. "What does it mean, Mom? What door?" "Stay close," Emily said firmly, though fear coiled in her stomach. She searched desperately for any way out. The room around them had started to breathe, the walls pulsating and threatening to collapse in on her. "Do you see it?" The figure taunted, a smirk stretching across its shadowed features, and as it spoke, the darkness seemed to reach behind them, further wrapping them in its suffocating grip. "That door is within you." Ben could barely keep his footing as Emily pulled him backward, towards the window, every instinct screaming for her to escape. "Mom, I'm scared," his voice cracked, the innocent sorrow in it tightening her heart. "I don't want to be here." "Neither do I," she rushed, tears threatening to spill. "But we have to stay strong. We can get out of this." As Emily backed away, the edges of the room shimmered, and she realized that the shadows were alive with movement, twitching like their own sentient entities. They seemed to reach out, brushing against her skin like icy fingers, and she shuddered in response. "Denial only amplifies your suffering," the figure hissed, its voice a jagged whisper that slithered into her. "Embrace the pain. Release yourself. I will never, ever accept you," Emily shouted, her voice echoing defiantly. She felt a surge of strength bubble within her, amplifying her resolve to protect Ben. "You're just a shadow, nothing more." But as soon as the words left her mouth, a gust of wind whipped through the room, slamming against them and tossing Ben off balance. Emily lunged forward, grabbing him just in time, but the force of the wind was immense, churning the air into a storm around them. With a blinding flash, a door appeared on the far wall, sudden and beckoning. The figure's laughter rose again, layered with sarcasm. "You think that is your way out? It is merely the beginning." Emily stared at the door as it pulsed with light, conflicting emotions roiling inside her. "Get ready, Ben," she said, feeling a raw urgency. "We're going to run." But even as they prepared to dash towards it, the walls began to shift, contorting in on themselves like the belly of a beast. The door shimmered, flickered, and then began to vanish, its existence taunting them. "Mom!" Ben cried, doubt creeping back into his voice. "What if it's a trap? There's no time!" She yelled, heat and uncertainty kindling into a fierce flame inside her. They had to try. Clutching her son's hand tightly, she propelled them forward, racing toward the doorway before it disappeared altogether. Just as they were about to grasp the doorknob, the figure surged between them and the exit, laughter boiling over in a mocking crescendo. "Escape is but a fleeting dream," it echoed, the shadows coiling tighter around them, holding them fast as it leaned in, eyes gleaming darkly. "The true horror lies in what you cannot escape yourself." The world around them twisted, obscuring light and hope as Emily's heart raced, torn between belief in the impossible and the demon that loomed ever closer. Would they fall into the depths of despair, or would they dare to face the unimaginable? With a deafening silence, the shadows closed in, and Emily felt the world slipping away. The darkness thickened, pressing in as Emily felt her breath hitch deep in her throat. It was a sickening weight, an invisible hand squeezing tighter with each passing second. She could feel the darkness swirling around them, pulsing with sinister energy, almost as if it had a heartbeat of its own. "Mom!" Ben's small voice broke through the fear, a thin thread of panic. Emily's grip tightened around his hand, anchoring him against the frenzy. "Stay close," she urged, desperation creeping into her tone. The shadows stirred, dark tendrils darting out like vipers, seeking to snag them in their grasp. She drew Ben closer, feeling the warmth of his body against her, a fragile comfort in an engulfing nightmare. "Make it go away, Mom!" The tremor in his voice sliced through her, igniting her own terror. She would not let this darkness take him, not if she could help it. But the figure loomed ever closer, the smirk carved into its amorphous face twisting into something more grotesque. "I can offer you power. Embrace your fear," it beckoned, the voice curling around her like a lover's touch, seductive yet vile. "Understanding the darkness within you is the only way out." Emily shook her head, fighting against the intrusion of its words. She recalled every night Sarah had shut her eyes, battling with her own demons, those whispers drowning in the memory of testing boundaries and opening doors that should have remained shut. "You don't understand. We are not afraid of you." The figure chuckled, a sound rich with mockery. "How quaint you believe you can survive by shunning what you truly are." The walls began to vibrate, a low humming sound seeping into the air, and the shadows flickered, darting at the corners of Emily's vision. Not real," she whispered, trying to fend off the encroaching dread that threatened to consume them both. "With every second wasted here, you slip further from the light," it hissed, tailing them like a lingering shadow. "Time is running out. You really think you can outrun your own reflection?" Emily's heart raced. Panic surged. Where was the door? Where was the exit? With every second, the reality around her warped, distorting into a nightmarish tapestry of fear. "Run!" she yelled, yanking Ben toward the far side of the room where the shadows were lighter, a desperate attempt to weave through the pulsating mass. As they sprinted, the figure's distorted laughter echoed through the chamber, an eerie chorus reverberating in her mind. "You cannot run! You cannot hide from the truth! It is within you! It is you! Just keep moving!" Even as she shouted, the realization dawned upon her there was no escape, not from themselves. They were tethered to it, every fragment of their past woven tight. But she couldn't let that thought settle too deeply. Hope was a fragile thing, and she had to cling to it. Ben stumbled, nearly pulling them both down, but with a sharp yank, Emily steadied him. The darkness lunged for them, slick and menacing, brushing against her back like a chilling caress. She felt the pang of despair almost overpower her, threatening to drag her down into silence. As they reached the wall, Emily spotted something glimmering in the gloom, a shard of light cutting through the shadows. It was no ordinary light. It flickered like a beacon, a chance, a promise for survival. "Over there!" she shouted, directing their steps toward it. But just as they were about to reach the luminous hope, the figure edged closer, stretching its sharp, shadowy fingers toward them, eager to snatch them back into the abyss. "Do not betray yourself," it hissed, voice low and lethal, a chilling reminder of the horrors they faced. "You are bound to me," and from that flickering light, a sound erupted, a cacophony of whispers, shrieks, those haunting echoes of sorrow that seemed to bleed from the walls themselves. The air thickened, and Emily understood. The real horror was not the figure itself, but what it uncovered within her. With one last desperate push, they charged toward the light, the shadows clawing at their backs with urgency. "We're almost there." As they lunged forward, the darkness swelled, reaching one last time to seize them. At the brink of the light, Emily felt the world tilt, as if gravity itself were uncoiling. Was escaping truly the end? With the shadows howling in the background, she felt herself teeter at the edge. Would light swallow them whole, or would they be consumed by the void? In that moment of suspended horror, Emily's heart raced as she grasped Ben's hand tighter, plunging forward, but what they found beyond the light remained a chilling question. The light enveloped them, bright and blinding, pushing back the darkness with a force that felt almost tangible. Emily squeezed Ben's hand tightly, feeling his little frame tremble beside her. She hoped this was the end of their nightmare, that they'd burst through into safety. But as their bodies crossed the threshold, the light surged and twisted, warping into something grotesque, a cosmic swirl of vivid colors that illuminated a void rather than the sanctuary they craved. The shadows chased after them, dissolving into a tide of malice, weaving through the light like oil on water. Is this it?" Emily whispered, dread creeping into her voice. The space around them felt alive with unsettling whispers, an endless echo of pleas and screams that clawed at her sanity. The serene facade cracked, revealing a horror that coiled tightly around her heart. Ben clutched her tighter, his small body trembling against her, and for a moment, they both stood frozen, bathed in light yet consumed by fear. "Look," Ben pointed, eyes wide. Ahead, a figure materialized, ethereal and shimmering, its countenance obscured by relentless light. Emily squinted, trying to make sense of this new arrival. Was it a savior or yet another predator? "Emily," the figure spoke softly, the voice resonant and familiar, cutting through the chaos with warmth. "You must confront what you fear most. Only then can you find peace. Sarah? Emily gasped, her heart sinking. It was the face of her sister, lost forever in the grip of her own demons. But there was something unsettling in the visage, an unsettling remnant of the darkness they just escaped. Don't trust it, Ben shouted, face filled with horror as the shadows wrapped tighter around them, clawing at their edges, seeping through the cracks in reality. No! Emily cried out, pulling Ben closer as she shoved past the memory of Sarah, its light flickering like a dying star. We can't go back. We want tea. With each step away, the figure's voice grew desperate, pleading. You don't understand. I can help you. Together, we can fight this. Emily's heart raced as the shadows began to morph, twisting into familiar faces, friends, family, all those who had been claimed by fear. They reached out with anguished hands, their mouths moving in silent screams. No! This is wrong! Her mind ached as she blocked them out, focusing on the pulsating lights still ahead. We want to succumb to this. As they pressed on, she felt the darkness shift, growing restless, swirling with resentment. The cacophony of anguish rose, crescendoing into a shriek that rattled the very core of her being. Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked, splitting wide as ripples of darkness erupted from below. Emily stumbled, clutching Ben as a fissure opened, ready to swallow them whole. She felt the cold, wet breath of fear exhaling from the abyss below, as the memories weaponized like darts aimed at her heart. This is not my fault! She screamed into the void. The moment she thought she was free, it had all come rushing back. Mom! Ben's small voice quavered, pulling her back to the present. The abyss was deeper than she realized, a gaping maw hungry for retribution. Hold on! She yelled, finding strength in the rhythm of her heartbeat, their lifeline pulsing against the gloom. Together, they surged forward again, the figures behind them reaching desperately, fading as they tore away from the chaos. Then, as they neared the edge of the light, Emily flicked her gaze back one last time, and her stomach dropped. The figure of Sarah, a wicked mix of what was once familiar and the grotesque transformation of fear, whispered, "But I'm the key to your freedom." Just as they plunged through the threshold of light, the darkness erupted behind them, a final roar that rippled through the air, unsettling everything in its wake. What lay beyond the light remained unknown, but Emily realized the battle was far from over. Would the past forever haunt them, or could they rewrite their future? The real answers lingered just out of reach, waiting like hungry shadows. The light pressed against Emily and Ben, hot and stinging, but it was a warmth they desperately craved. With a deep inhale, Emily pushed forward, letting the brilliance envelop them completely, banishing the lingering shadows that clawed at their backs. The sensation of freedom swelled in her chest, rushing like a tidal wave, and for a moment, hope ignited a fleeting dream of safety. But the brightness couldn't erase the truths they had just faced, memories that clawed at the edges of her consciousness as the light began to fade. She stumbled, eyes squinting against the brilliance. Ben, still clasping her hand, echoed her movements. The world around them shifted, fading into a different landscape entirely. They emerged on the other side into a familiar yet altered Cherrywood Glen. Everything looked the same, a quiet street lined with autumn-touched trees, vibrant against the crisp sky. But beneath the pretty facade, Emily felt the tremors of uncertainty lacing through the air. "Mom, are we safe now?" Ben's voice cracked, fear still stirring behind his wide eyes. "I think so?" Emily hesitated, uncertainty curling through her gut. Dread lingered like smoke, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows had merely retreated, lurking just outside their sight. As they stepped toward their home, an unshakable instinct urged her to turn back. "Ben, wait," she said softly, eyes scanning their surroundings. She wanted to believe they had escaped, but the churning fear still wrapped around her heart. What if it's not over? Do you think it could come back? Ben's brows furrowed, innocence battling against the knowledge of horrors they had witnessed. "Yes," Emily replied honestly, her voice shaking slightly. "But we're stronger now. We'll face whatever comes together." Ben smiled, but it was encased in the weight of unshed tears. Just then, a whisper twined through the rustling leaves overhead. "Help us." Do you hear that? Emily asked, chest tightening. She turned, scanning the trees to find the source of the haunting sound. But it seemed to resonate from within her mind, tempting her with echoing familiarity. For a moment, terror prickled at her skin, and she felt the pull of shadows edging closer. Yet, as she peered deeper into the trees, she saw something, a flicker of light beyond the darkness, a hint that the cycle could break if she stood firm. No, she murmured, shaking her head as she pushed through the fear. We want to look back. Just as they reached the door of their home, Ben tugged at her hand. Mom, what if it comes for us? What if it's waiting? Emily knelt, meeting his gaze, trying to radiate strength. Ben, we carry it with us, our memories, our love, everything we've faced in the dark. We will never let it take us again. Whatever shape it wears, we will stand up to it. Together. She nudged the door open, the familiar creak echoing through the quiet. Inside, the living room felt still, yet something pulsed in the air, a sense of rebirth, of reclaiming their space. Slowly, Emily reached for the light switch, flicking it on. The room exploded into warmth and clarity, casting away any remaining shadows. See? We're home, she whispered, squeezing Ben's hand. Safe. But even as they turned to take in their surroundings, the family photos that adorned the walls, the toys scattered on the floor, Emily knew the truth. Home wasn't just a place but a feeling, a bond forged through trials. They might have escaped the physical grasp of darkness, but their true battle would lie in confronting what still resided in their hearts. I love you, she said suddenly, and the words hung in the air, grounding them in the present. I love you too, Mom. Ben's smile bloomed, brightening the room. And in that moment, a sense of peace washed over Emily. They had faced things no one else could imagine, and the shadows held no power here. Together, they would rewrite their story, restoring joy to their lives, filling each room with laughter, and even taking time to explore their dark corners with courage, instead of fear. As they melted into the comfort of their sanctuary, Emily's heart thudded with hope. Perhaps the dark weaver still lingered, woven into their fabric of life, but she now understood that love and togetherness could illuminate even the darkest revelations. They stepped forward into their new beginnings. Don't forget, this is your moment. If you don't want to miss more thrilling tales like this, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button to empower our algorithm, and make sure others join this journey. And let me know your thoughts. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who should know about this finale. Your support means everything, and only true fans understand how vital it is to keep this channel thriving.